And now the sermon begins. I just have to wait till my husband gets up here.
Gotta wait for me to find my way here.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Cindy.
And I'm Shawn.
We're glad you're here. And Shawn, are you okay? You look like you're carrying the weight on your shoulders.
Well, it does feel that way sometimes. Get up and listen to the news in the morning. It's hard to stay optimistic with everything that's going on in the world. And there always seems to be another conflict or something silly going on in Washington.
Well, I think a lot of us know that feeling, but it can be very easy to get overwhelmed.
So where do we go to find reminders that people can really come together for something good?
Well, tomorrow, did you know it is International Moon Day? And it's observed on July 20th. And it marks the Apollo 11th landing on the moon in 1969. And this year it feels especially meaningful. While so much of the news has been focused on conflict, uncertainty, and division, another story quietly captured people's hearts. That was the Artemis program. Watching that crew reminded us this story isn't just about a mission, it's about choosing hope over discouragement. It's about seeing what's possible when people work together.
So this morning, we'd like to spend a little time exploring what lessons can be learned from the Artemis crew that we can carry forward in our own lives.
And I just wanted to say one other thing. Jeremy Hansen, who was one of the Artemis astronauts, he speaks of gratitude, love, and joy. And during the mission, he invited his crew to join the joy train. So I'm extending that this morning to all of you, and remembering that we are in orbit together. Okay, let me change the slide. Back in May, Eric delivered a wonderful sermon, and he talked about the overview effect. And that's a shift in awareness that astronauts describe when they see Earth from space for the very first time. It sounds simple when you say it out loud, but it describes something very profound. A moment when your perspective changes, because from space there are no borders, no divisions the way we draw them on a map. There's nothing between us and them, just one planet, its whole fragile and suspended in darkness. While most of us will never experience this firsthand, generations of astronauts have experienced it. And they've described the same realization, looking back at Earth and suddenly understanding that this is our shared home.
Astronaut Christina Cook, who trained as part of the Artemis program, described the perspective this way. You look back on Earth, you don't see any boundaries, you don't see any borders, you just see one beautiful, interconnected, but fragile planet. It really changes your perspective. It also changes what matters. The overview effect reminds you that we are all in this together and that we need to take care of our home.
And for a moment, people looked up instead of down. The Artemis program brought together 4 wonderful astronauts who trained for years. They spent thousands of hours of preparation for something humanity hasn't done in more than half a century. And it's a mission marked by milestones.
The milestones are significant. There was the first woman to travel in the direction of the moon, the first international astronaut on a lunar mission, and the farthest any crew has traveled since the Apollo era, including a trajectory that took them around the moon and views far side of the moon that we haven't seen since the 70s.
And those milestones matter, not just historically, but visually, emotionally, and culturally. Because for most people on this planet, the last time humans went to the moon happened before they were even born. And so this moment isn't just a return to space exploration, it's a new generation witnessing it for the first time.
And I bet you didn't know that in mission and control and leadership roles, we're also seeing milestones like the launch director, a woman who guided the mission, and a control room where women are not the exception, but a visible and essential part of the team.
And there's something very powerful about that image because it changes what people can imagine for themselves. Kids watching this today just don't see astronauts far away in space. They see people who look like them building rockets, running missions, and making decisions. And more broadly, the Artemis era reflects a widening circle, one that includes Black astronauts, women, and voices that were once excluded from space exploration. Now they're serving as scientists, engineers, and leaders at every level. And not as symbols, but as essential contributors whose presence changes what leadership in space looks like.
What stands out is not that these milestones happen, but now that they feel commonplace and part of a larger shift, a crew chosen not for sameness, but for what each person brings to the mission. Different backgrounds, different paths, working as one crew.
And that connects to our Unitarian Universalist values, our belief in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and the idea that diversity is not something to be managed, it should be welcomed, and it strengthens the whole.
So when we look at the crew, we are not only seeing astronauts, but we're seeing what looks like when humanity chooses to expand its circle.
Now, we keep using the word crew when we talk about Artemis. And it's interesting because in real life, we don't use that word. We always say team, a sports team, a work team, a committee, but a crew feels different.
A team can be a group of people working toward the same goal, but a crew is something else. It's people who are completely responsible for one another, not just for the outcome, but for each other's safety, clarity, and success along the way. There is a level of trust in a crew that goes deeper than just coordination.
Because that's what being in a crew means. You don't walk away when things get hard. You lean on one another. You listen more deeply. You show up for each other in ways that matter. And the Artemis crew's time in orbit is described in terms of science, engineering, and precision. But what really stands out as powerfully are the human moments. Small choices that reveal what they carry with them when they left Earth behind.
NASA astronaut and Artemis mission specialist Christina Koch became visibly emotional, choking up while sharing a profound reflection on seeing our planet from the Orion spacecraft. When we saw the tiny Earth, people asked our crew what impressions we had. And honestly, what struck me wasn't necessarily just Earth. It was all the blackness around it. Earth is just this small lifeboat hanging undisturbingly in the universe. So I may not have learned everything that I need to know on this journey has to teach me, but there is one new thing I know, and that is that planet Earth, you are a crew. Koch went on to define what it means to be part of a crew. A crew is inescapably, beautifully, dutifully linked, describing them as people who share the same needs, give grace, hold each other accountable, and work together.
And I want to give you a couple examples. On April 6th, which was just a day after Easter, came one of the mission's most moving moments. Mission specialist Jeremy Hansen, speaking with Mission Control, suggested that the first crater they would identify be named after the spacecraft itself, Integrity. But then he went on, and for the second crater, surrounded by his crew, Hansen said, "A number of years ago, we started this journey in our close-knit astronaut family, and we lost a loved one. Her name was Carol, the spouse of Reed, the mother of Katie and Ellie." So in that moment, and I'll show you a picture of his wife, but when you're looking at that picture, in that moment, the work of exploration expanded beyond charts and coordinates. Because even in orbit, on a mission defined by distance and discovery, they made space for remembrance. They named what they saw for love, for loss, and for people who remain part of every journey.
And a crew also has many moments of joy, moments when the work pauses for a breath and the connection comes forward. In one image released by NASA titled Moonjoy, Christina Koch, Jeremy Hansen, Reed Weissman, and Victor Glover shared a group hug in the Orion spacecraft on April 7th when they began their journey home.
Another moment of joy came from one of the smallest passengers aboard Artemis 2. And if you look at the picture, his name is Rise. He's a plush mascot designed by an 8-year-old boy, Luke Yee. And do you know inside that plush mascot, there was a SD drive that carried 5,647,889 names from people all over the world. And they traveled in the journey around the moon. So in the photo of the astronauts, you can see Rise floating in the wakefulness of space, a small reminder that every journey is shared.
It's also a reminder that even when we reach further into space, we don't leave our humanity behind, we bring it with us.
And that's something we understand here, right here. Even if we always don't use that word, a Unitarian Universalist congregation is more than a group of people who happen to gather in the same place. We're a crew.
Throughout this morning, we've looked through the eyes of the astronauts. We've imagined what it might feel like to look back at our planet from the depth of space. And perhaps the greatest gift of that perspective is this. It reminds us that we belong to something larger than ourselves, one shared home, one human family.
And maybe that's what Unitarian Universalism is trying to really teach us, not simply through our practice, but through the ways we live together. We belong to one another. Our joys are multiplied when they're shared. Our sorrows become lighter when they're carried together. Our acts of kindness have a way of reaching farther than we ever know. Like planets in orbit, we're held together by relationships. Sometimes we drift closer, but sometimes life pulls us apart. But love has a way of drawing us back.
And that's what happens here. Every Sunday we practice being a crew. We celebrate, we grieve, we sing, we learn, we laugh, and we serve. It may not look like a spacecraft launch, but it is no less extraordinary.
Because nothing that happens here happens alone. Every Sunday is built by many hands and hearts. Worship, music, welcome, outreach, technology, hospitality, leadership. Oh, let's not forget an important one, snack angels. And the quiet care that often goes unseen but never goes unfelt. Every part of it matters. Like Artemis, every mission depends on a crew that trusts one another to move forward together. Here we are shaped by wonder, we're sustained by community, and we learn what it makes to be a crew. People that don't just share space, but share responsibility for one another every week. Now, he was going to go next, but I've decided to go off script, and I'm not supposed to get political, so I'm not going to really get political, but Here's my little 1-minute break.
Just a little bit.
So this Easter, there were two very different public messages that caught my attention. One came from the world of politics, speaking the language of conflict and division. And the other came from the Artemis astronaut Victor Glover, who said, I think as we go into Easter Sunday, thinking about all the cultures around the world, whether you celebrate it or not, whether you believe in God or not, this is an opportunity for all of us to remember where we are, who we are, and that we're all in the same thing. We've got to get through this together, he said. Those two messages made me stop and think. One asks us to see our differences first, and the other asks us to remember what we have in common. So as a Unitarian Universalist, I know which vision speaks most deeply to our values. All right, that's my unscripted moment. Now back to our regularly scheduled program.
Before we leave, we invite you into one final covenant, not only with this fellowship, but with one another. Please recite the congregational pledge with me. The words are in the overhead slide and also in your order of service. We are not passengers here.
We are a crew.
A crew does not travel alone.
A crew travels with trust.
When one of us struggles,
we adjust our course.
When one of us celebrates,
we celebrate together.
When the work is difficult,
we hold steady together.
When we lose perspective, we are in orbit together, and we are responsible for one another. Perhaps that is what the astronauts discovered through all of this. Not simply how far humanity can travel in space, but how deeply we truly belong to one another.
And whether our journey takes us across the oceans, across the continents, or only across the sanctuary to greet someone new. May we travel with wonder. May we walk gently with one another, and may we cherish this remarkable earth. And may we remember one planet, one people, one crew in orbit together. Amen.
Amen.
Shawn, you're standing a little taller now. Has the weight on your shoulders lifted even a little bit?
Yeah, I guess. You know, it's helps me to remember being here, that we're not carrying all this stuff alone and that we're all having shared experiences.